Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, what do you do after retiring from running the second largest police department in LA County? How about running the largest sheriff's department in the United States? I am delighted to be joined today by Sheriff Robert Lunas. So nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I have to ask, what prompted your decision to retire from Long Beach PD, but then take that precious retirement time and run for LA Sheriff?
Where do I start? So I've always had a ton of respect for the men and women of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I grew up in unincorporated East Los Angeles, and that's the department that I grew up watching. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever got in my head that I wanted to be a police officer was probably roughly about the first grade when I saw a sheriff's deputy in my classroom.
Oh.
And I saw that uniform, I saw that star on his chest, and it was like, I want to do that. I watched Adam 12 as a kid, but growing up in unincorporated East Los Angeles, mostly a Latino community, you didn't always have the best relationships with the police. Family, neighbors, not everybody was a fan of them. And I always thought, just from a respect perspective, that it could be different. And I had good experiences, and I also had negative experiences. And that really motivated me to become a police officer in the first place. But as I went through my entire career with the Long Beach Police Department, 36 years to be exact, when I was concluding my career, looking at some of the challenges that I saw from the outside at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, great men and women, but I just felt they had some leadership challenges, and I wanted to step up to the plate. You don't complain about something unless you want to do something about it. And I said, I'm not done here. I want to use all my professional experience, education, my personal experiences, and I felt that I could take this department where it needed to go, and that's the next level.
Were you confused as a young man trying to decide, why am I seeing, and this is going to sound awful, but the good cop, bad cop kind of thing? Was that baffling to you?
That's an excellent question, because yes, it was. Because a lot of times what I saw on the streets, specifically the way people around me articulated their contacts with law enforcement, then I'd watch a show like Adam 12, which was about LAPD. I was going, well, there's a big difference here.
Yeah.
So how can I connect the dots, and how could I make it different, even at an early age?
Oh, wow. Okay. So one of the things that you really wanted, in your campaign and in the messaging that you were sharing with everyone that was going to vote for this position, was how you wanted to correct fractured relationships. Granted, it's not an enormous amount of time that you've been in office, and we have to actually understand that, things take time, but how are you feeling with that process? Is that process progressing the way you wanted it to?
It's definitely progressing forward. And there were a lot of fractured relationships, unfortunately, but my personality is such that I try to put myself in the other person's shoes. I really invest a lot in relationships and partnerships. I feel that's an instrumental part of law enforcement. So as I've been sitting in office, I have made contact with, whether it's elected officials, other police officials, community members, so many people across the board, and I believe it's making a difference. I believe sitting down and just listening to people and then trying to move forward and finding common ground is going to help eventually rebuild the public trust that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department should have.
So along those lines, coming from a police department to a sheriff's department, you have a background in law enforcement, but what are the differences between the way a sheriff's department operates versus a police department, and how are you using your experience from Long Beach in LA, and have you found there are areas like, oh wow, this is remarkably different, I need to figure these two things out?
There are definitely more similarities than differences.
Okay.
And the experience I've had, the 36 years I talk about, over 20 of that was in management positions, executive management positions. So that's been able to help me tremendously with the relationships inside the department, within the political realm of the county, and more importantly, with our community. The differences that do exist between the police department that I came from and the sheriff's department now that I proudly work for is that it's the custody system, the court system. You stated earlier, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's is the largest sheriff's department in the country. Mm-hmm. That also means that we have the largest county jail system in the United States. That is unique and it is different, but it is an amazing challenge. People that know me know I'm a person of faith. So for example, when I'm talking about people that are inmates, I don't just look at them as people who are in custody. I look at them as people who something went wrong in their lives. Is there an opportunity to help some of them? Obviously not the whole population is consistently the same, but I have an extraordinary obligation to make things better. Because the way I see it, if we can rehab and eventually try and put people back out onto or into the communities, that we can either educate or help with drug addiction, help them get a job, how much better are we off when we're able to do things like that? So those responsibilities are different than what a police chief typically deals with. The court systems, our search and rescue teams, we have amazing talent at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
So how much sway and how much power and how much input do you have in these reform concepts? You know, because it seems, obviously, you know, prevention is so much better than dealing with the aftermath of someone who is damaged internally that does something terrible to someone else. But there, you know, how much control does the sheriff have in making a place for these people or programs for these people or opportunities for these people? And then also, you know, to deal with the making sure that where's the success? Are we having success? Do there need to be changes? Do we need more investment in time and money? You know, where can the sheriff's department and where can you in particular fit into this puzzle of making change?
You asked a lot of questions within that one, so let me try and break that down a little bit. So in regards to how much influence I have as your sheriff, I believe I have a lot of influence. Sometimes I wish I can have more, but I have to work within the government system, the bureaucracy, right? So for example, when I'm talking about our budget, and the budget drives personnel decisions, decisions in custody, because decisions out in patrol where we're patrolling our neighborhoods. I have to work with the county CEO, for example, county HR, our 5 board of supervisors. That's a team effort to try and properly bring forward a budget that's prioritized, a budget that makes sense, a budget that we can sell to our community. So from a political perspective, that's a big aspect of the job. Right. In regards to influencing policy and decisions that affect everyday people, I'm absolutely in the middle of that, meaning that whether we're talking about crime reduction, impacting homelessness, one of my big things as your sheriff is modernizing the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I call it a 21st century Sheriff's Department, meaning that trying to improve our technologies, efficiencies, equipment, so that our deputies have the best possible policies, training, and equipment to serve our community. I'm able to influence all those things within reach, of course, but it's within that budget that I have to perform all these duties, and it makes the job exciting, and it's something that we can do, which also includes programs in our custody facilities. And I believe that we've put the right people in the right places, for example, in custody, and the leadership role that they're taking and looking at programs in a different way that we have. Like, for example, we graduated several women from a soccer, a world-renowned soccer program in one of our custody facilities. Those are very important things to do, and we do have influence on just bringing in sometimes people or programs that may not cost that much money, but just need to take a little bit, let's think out of the box. Let's not get stuck in we've always done it this way. Let's be creative and innovative and do things differently.
Yeah, observing all the areas of where there needs to be adjustments and change. And you have actually made a few, like in terms of creating new positions. You created, you have a CFO, you have a Director of Constitutional Policing. What prompted your decision to create those positions? Where did you see the need, and what do you hope these positions will do to help what you're doing with the Sheriff's Department?
So one of the first things I did when I became the new sheriff is observing what was causing a lot of conflict between the former sheriff and, for example, the Board of Supervisors, which was very well documented. And one of the main primary issues was the budget. Oh. I recognized that the sheriff's budget was at that time approximately $3.7 billion. And there was no CFO that was running that budget. So I went out and hired a professional, a CFO, who actually helps manage the budget. I also brought in a new Office of Constitutional Policing. During the campaign, I heard it very loud and clear from our community in Los Angeles County that they were fed up with hearing about the issue of deputy gangs or cliques or subgroups. And then the issue of consent decrees or settlement agreements on our department. We have 5 existing that, based on our federal monitors and the U.S. Attorney's Office, we were not getting a passing grade on a lot of the things that we are doing. So this Office of Constitutional Policing is tasked with several things. One, put together an office that looks at the issue of deputy gangs, cliques, tattoos, and things of that nature. Two, to work with other entities, including the U.S. government, to change our behavior as it relates to the settlement agreements, and eventually get rid of those once we've earned the government's trust that we can do this job without that federal oversight. The other thing they're looking at is policies. I want to make sure, as I talk about this 21st Century Sheriff's Department, that we are not only meeting the standards of policing across the country, but that we're leaders again, that people are looking at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department as somewhere where they come to look at policy, they look at procedures and training, the way we lead, the way we manage. That is the vision, and we're going to get there. With the people that work with me, just extraordinary people.
Got it. Okay, so obviously you have this department, and this department is doing its due diligence in creating these policies and procedures within the department that are acceptable and appropriate, et cetera. But you, as Sheriff Robert Luna, is there a line in the sand that you will not tolerate something from one of your deputies?
I expect the same thing I would expect of myself for the 37 years that I have been in this profession. I want constitutional policing. I want people to treat people the way you want your family treated. I always tell people, I remember being that little kid in East LA who didn't speak very good English, with my mom who spoke no English whatsoever, coming up to a counter just asking for basic help and not getting it because she didn't speak the language. Oh. I don't want anybody in our community to ever feel that way. So I want everybody treated the best possible way. And like I tell my deputies, and I actually ask the community the same thing, I will support our men and women if they are going out there every day and doing a great job, which, by the way, 99% of our employees do on a daily basis. Sure. I will support them. But this job is, I will challenge anybody, one of the most difficult jobs that are out there. People are going to make mistakes. I believe we need to support our deputies and police officers when they make mistakes. But if somebody comes out and they are acting or behaving in an unconstitutional manner, they're way out of policy, they're breaking the law. Public trust is so paramount in the job that we do. I cannot accept that, nor should the community. But again, I ask our community members, please support your local sheriff's department, police department. support us. We have wonderful men and women that come to work every day, put it all on the line physically and mentally, and they do amazing work every day.
So 18,000 sworn officers, are you feeling confident that you will know and learn whether things are working the way they're supposed to be? I mean, how is that process? Is you getting constant information on a daily basis? I mean, how is that getting rolled out, and how are you hearing the result of what it is that you want to do?
So our department has over 17,000 total employees.
17, okay.
About a little over 10,000 of those are sworn, and the rest are professional staff. And again, they do amazing work. And the majority of the feedback I get is absolutely positive about what we do. Once in a while, there are situations that come up, and I believe that we have good systems in place that end up holding our employees and our supervisors accountable when things don't go right. Although sitting in my seat for 8 months, part of what I've been doing along or through the Office of Constitutional Policing is making sure that all of our systems, our processes, our policy are not only up to standard but beyond that standard. And once in a while, you've got to check yourself and not be afraid to allow people in to say, hey, can we be doing something better, differently? Because I think if we're not always trying to get better, we're going to fail. We can't be afraid to change. And law enforcement has been in a constant state of change for the last several years. And again, I would challenge that as a profession, we probably look at ourselves as much or more than anybody else, and we're held accountable to a very different standard than most other professions or people as individuals.
So you mentioned, obviously, as part of this, this new sheriff's department is technology, and incorporating technology into tools that the officers used, tools that you have on hand to understand what's going on out in the community, preparation tools. What are the things that you want to have? What are the things that you have? And what are you things that you're, working to get?
Wow, I can give you a long list of things that I would like to have. So for example, coming in, our computer-aided dispatch system, which runs our dispatch center, needs to be replaced. It's over 33 years old. So that is something
You've
that...
got a landline with a cord to the wall at that point.
And we need to look at that, and it needs to be replaced. I look at our records management system. That needs to be replaced. We are not in compliance with what they call NIBRs, which is a way that we send crime stats to the FBI. We want to get that fixed. A jail management system. A lot of the consent decrees or settlement agreements that we have in our custody facilities, it's not because our people are doing a bad job. It's primarily because we're unable to provide data about what we're doing every day. And I want to get to a place that if I need information about a use of force, that it's just a push button. That's part of a jail management system. And once we get that, you'll find that we will be able to stand up in court or in the court of public opinion and provide better information. And that's just a small example. I could go on and on.
Well, what about training? Because I did actually hear something the other day about, this a possibility of virtual reality training for law enforcement, specifically here in the city of Los Angeles, but I would imagine that, it would be something that could be utilized in the county at large or even in the region. What about something like that in terms of doing things up front, not just in hand while they're actually actively on the job, but in preparation for what could potentially happen?
Training is an absolutely critical part of daily law enforcement. And one of my priorities is to make sure that our employees have the best training available to them as possible. Right now, we don't. We're deficient in some of those areas. So I'm going to be working with our Board of Supervisors and identifying all of our training needs, so then I can adequately budget for training. And this is both mandatory training that we get from POST, the Police Officers of Standards and Training from the state. You talked about virtual training. We have to be able to go out and look for opportunities of how other people are training best practices and bring them here to the Sheriff's Department, because there are a lot of tools out there. We just need to be able to purchase them. If it's the right tool for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, bring it to our training staff and then move forward, because it prepares us more to encounter the very or extremely difficult job that our deputies face out, whether it's out on the street in our community, in our custody environment, in the courts that we serve, and everything that we do.
You talked about relationships, and I know that you've built relationships over your decades of law enforcement, but now you're in this position, and you're in a leadership position in a very unique environment. LA, there's nowhere like it in the world. And so how is it going with others that are in, I know you've stood with Chief Moore, and how are you doing with all of the other components that actually wrap around the mission of all of these organizations for public safety?
So part of my experience as the police chief in Long Beach, which I had the position for 7 years, I was elected and then re-elected to the executive board of the Major City Chiefs Association. I was also the board chair for the Joint Regional Intelligence Center. What that means in layman terms is that I wasn't only the chief of police at the time, I really immersed myself on a national level with other leadership or other police chiefs and sheriffs. So I have those relationships now. It built quite a foundation. We can't do this job on our own. So for example, recently you've seen a lot of TV coverage on retail theft. These smash and grabs or grab and goes. So when you talk about somebody like Chief Moore, who I have an amazing relationship with, I could pick up the phone and call any chief in LA County, because that is about relationships and there's building trust over time, and we help each other out in this county like I don't believe or I haven't seen in other places. So those relationships do matter. And it's not only with local police chiefs or other sheriffs that border us, like in Orange County. If Don Barnes in Orange County needs something or vice versa, I can pick up the phone and we help each other out. Same goes for every sheriff in our or other sheriffs in our region. But that goes for if I need something from state DOJ, calling the Attorney General, Rob Bonta. Or this morning, I spent several hours at the FBI office up in Los Angeles talking about Homeland Security challenges, the ATF, the DEA. It could go on and on. When we need help with an issue to protect our community, it's not about silos, it's not about egos, and that's what I've learned over my career, that it's those relationships, those partnerships, that collaboration that is key to keeping our community safe.
I'm going to bring up something that may or may not be something that's fun to talk about or easy to talk about with this whole smash and grab thing, and it might actually be in a different situation when someone watches this. But the fact that you had a personal experience at a Marshall's in which you saw a couple gals run out the door with a whole bunch of stuff, and that you learned that the employees of the store were told not to do anything. And philosophically, is that the right thing or the wrong thing to do? And and then there's the other case, of course, where there were employees that quite actively stopped what was happening in there. I mean, the laws kind of come into conflict sometime with the protection of the people. How do you justify those two things?
Number one, you got to focus on doing the right thing. And if somebody is hurting somebody or stealing from somebody, there needs to be accountability at the end of the day. I am, as a police officer, or now sheriff, for the last 37 years, I've always been what I call victim-centered. But I'm also, when you look at social justice, criminal justice reform, I understand there needs to be a balance with over incarceration and things of that nature, which I deal with now as the sheriff.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you do, when you're dealing with issues of like zero bail, and the fact that there are, if you don't commit a serious or violent crime, the chances are if you commit some kind of crime that you may be cited and released, booked and released. That is something our community is going to have to deal with. And what I tell people is to make sure that when you are voting in the voting booth, you got to read the fine print. Please do your research. Don't just fill in those bubbles. Whether you're talking about state legislators, a sheriff, or what I'm going to ask people to really look at is judges. You really need to look at the track record of our judges and see what kind of decisions they're making. But is it something that matches our values? I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly.
You are, because I think people are surprised that there is no punishment for these crimes that seem to actually hurt people, but it's nothing that law enforcement can really do anything about because the law now sits in a particular realm.
Well, I disagree that law enforcement can't do anything.
Okay.
Because I want our community to know that if a crime has been committed, they do need to call the police.
Okay.
And what I tell our community, whether it's a resident in one of our neighborhoods or a business community, that we will respond, we will investigate. That's our portion. If a crime occurred, then if we file a report, that'll go to whether it's the district attorney or the city attorney, but that's our responsibility. And then at the end of the day, through data, not just emotions, we've got to look at is this working? So when we're talking about criminal justice reform, for example, I believe that a lot of the laws have changed. Many of them were very well intended. It is time for us to go back, research, and do an analysis. What's working and what is not. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the crime rate. We have to look at the perception of fear. And right now, a lot of people don't believe we're safe. But yet our crime stats show that crime is down. So it is our job not to scare people, but to educate people, share information with them. But please remember this, that when we're talking about criminal justice issues and crime, the police are only a percentage of part of the equation. We have the district attorney, we have the city attorney, we have the judges, we have public defenders, we have incarceration both at the county level and at the state level, probation officers, parole officers. I mean, there is a whole pie to some of the challenges that we face.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't actually talk about what you need in terms of recruiting, because, you know, there is that opportunity for people to actively get involved in this new visionary sheriff's department, and I imagine that you probably are looking for great candidates that want to be a part of the team.
We are, and I want to start off by saying that I have been blessed. I have spent 37 years doing this job, and although it is very difficult at times, it is one of the most rewarding careers anybody could ever have.
Okay.
It's a family, greatest job in the world, with decent salary and pay. We are a little short-handed right now. Our employees are working their tails off, but I invite you to visit lasd.org/careers.
Okay.
That's lasd.org/careers, and give us an opportunity and come and serve the community. Come and make a difference. We're waiting for you.
Well, thank you so much, and promise me you'll come back.
Absolutely.
All right, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.